Alright, YouTube, it's time to round out this video series, Axis and Allies, Anniversary Edition, 1942 setup, no national objectives, by focusing on the final country in turn order, and that's going to be the United States. Now, in other versions of this game, I definitely favor a heavy kill Germany first strategy. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what the U.S. would do to help out there, to help out England, then eventually go after Germany. Now, if there's was ever a version of the game, aside from Global 40, which I haven't played, aside from that, if there's ever a version of this game for the U.S. to focus on Japan, I feel that it is this one. And I'll get into why here in a little bit. But first, let's say that you do want to focus on Germany. What do you want to look at? Well, as always, you need to be aware of where the German Navy is and where the German Air Force is. Now, you do go last, which means both Germany will go before you as well as England. So things are going to look very different than what they look like here. England will have new ships, more than likely, that it purchased that will have placed down as well. And you need to coordinate with England, especially early. You also have the Italian Navy down here to worry about, which in other versions you don't necessarily need to worry about. You do have a German Navy down here. In other versions of the game, you have a little bit of one over here. It's usually a little more powerful, maybe like a battleship. You don't have the Italian Navy, but the Germans have a little bit more. In this game, Germany, Italy are going to be separate. So if the Axis have left themselves open and your ships are going to be protected, you could move down here and just take Morocco. Now, you just have one destroyer and two transports. That's not a whole lot to defend it. And so you want to be very careful about making that as an opening move. Now, maybe England's moved some ships down there, maybe it's a little more protected. They only themselves have one cruiser up here, and that means they didn't move the cruiser over here or over here to defend their navy they're trying to build. So chances are you're going to be in a very poor position if you come down here on the first turn. But I don't want to take that off the table just in case that is an option that's available because things Germany and Italy have done. You are able to reinforce England, so if England's worried about a sea lion on their turn, and they express this concern to you, they might move their fleet here over to here, put a new fleet here, and you could move over this way. You still, and both you and England still want to be careful about what Germany has to throw at you. They could have some air forces, depending on what they do with this navy. They could, if they move it out at all, they could potentially hit there. So you do want to be careful about that. But that's a possible move. If you're not able to do that, you could either move your couple ships up here, out of range of Germany, but in such a position that you are going to start coming across here on your second turn, with England, a little more coordination. You could also move these ships down here. Again, they're not going to be able to do much, but they're going to be out of range of Germany. And then if you build new ships here, then these ships come here and the new ships come here on turn 2 and you hit Africa. Just depending on what you and England want to do on that front. Now, if you were to move your ships up this way, it does allow these initial ships to help out England and coordinate with England up here, but it also means that your ships down here, your new ones, aren't going to be able to join that fleet, because on turn 2, what you moved here is going to be moving over with England, what you have here is going to move up here. So it helps England, but your stuff isn't coordinated quite as well. Eventually, in most of the games that I've played, England and the U.S. end up splitting their fleet in a kill Germany first strategy. It's easier for England to focus up north because they can place ships right there, which means the U.S. is going to focus down here, and if you have to split them eventually, sometimes having the U.S. focus down here from the get-go makes a little bit more sense. But again, it's going to depend on the position Britain's in. If it needs those extra ships, if its naval defense is looking a little bit shaky and it needs that destroyer, or there's some worry about sea line and it needs a couple more troops here, then going up north might be the thing that you would want to do. You also have this bomber you could send over if you wanted to. Then you have 2 bombers over here. You can strategically bomb Germany, or you can have them move over this way and start trying to hit Italy every round. And just position your bombers so they can make it there and back. Maybe that's in Egypt. Maybe that's in Caucasus over here. But that could be a big hindrance to Italy, and that could help Russia a lot, potentially. And if there is a sea lion, and it looks like it might be a little bit shaky, as much as it hurts to lose bombers first, bombers do only defend at 1, and so you can leave units, even infantry that defend at 2, or tanks that defend at 3, or even fighters. You can keep them around just a little bit longer. And so if it looks like Sea Lion's going to be close, you might do that. Now, if it looks like that Sea Lion, Germans are going to attempt it, but the odds are very much in your favor, you probably wouldn't want to do that. But if it's going to be really, really close, losing a bomber or even 2 is a lot better than losing a capital, especially if you weren't, if you hadn't anticipated it and taken other precautions. Like maybe the U.S. is built up and they can take it back right away. Typically, that's not going to be the case. So those are some things you might do over here. Now, I did say that if there was ever a game to go after Japan as the U.S., this would be it. So we're going to scroll across the board. Oh, and remember, you do have this destroyer here. You could move him this way if you wanted to, or you can move him the other way. There's a chair moving out of the way. And come over here. So why do I say that Japan might be the way to go in this version? Well, we talked in other videos about how, unlike in other versions of the game, it's going to be tougher and slower going for Japan to come through Russia over here. It's also going to be similarly difficult and time-consuming for them to come through here, which means as they get pressure from this way, they can't make up for that. They can't grab production nearly as quickly over here as they would in other versions of the game, which means they are going to have to devote more resources. They aren't going to be able to fight a 2-front war as easily as they otherwise would. Grab a bunch of production here and then just start building defense over here. They're going to be able to get some, but nowhere near what they could in other versions. In fact, they're mainly going to be focused down here, and especially if England builds a factory and causing this thrust to slow down even more, Japan's going to be very vulnerable to a U.S. buildup. So Japan may or may not attack you at Pearl Harbor, and that's fine, either way. You do have this fleet here. You have enough with this fleet, this bomber, that fighter, the fighter on Hawaii, and if you decide not to move the bomber on the East Coast, you do have that bomber as well that can fly over here, participate in this battle, and wipe out anything that Japan has left over. You can also build another carrier here. You're going to have enough fighters. You have at least 2, 1, 2. You could build a second carrier and bring over your fighter from eastern United States, and now you have a fleet with at least a few surface ships here, and you have 2 carriers here with 3 fighters between them. You could buy, let me check the cost. I don't recall in this version how much the U.S. starts with, but if you can build another fighter on your turn, you've got 2 fully loaded carriers over here, plus the destroyer you're moved up. You're going to be in a very strong position to start hitting Japan. Now, when it comes to going after Japan, there are 2 main methods of attack that I see. One of them, especially if the Japanese have made a miscalculation here and Russia has moved into Manchuria, you could attack up in the north. One move gets you within range of Tokyo. You're not to Tokyo after one turn, but one move gets you in range of Manchuria, of the Soviet coastline. So that's a possible option, especially if you want to reinforce the Soviets if they've taken Manchuria. Can be a good move. The disadvantage of that is it doesn't really put you in range of a whole lot else of value. You've got Japan itself, and you've got Manchuria. So if the Soviets, or if Manchuria isn't weak, or if the Soviets haven't taken it, then I would actually favor a different route down this way. Now, the Caroline Islands here are going to be key. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, they are one turn away from your production over here. So you can build stuff at the very next turn, move it in there. So you can quickly get reinforcements there. Now Japan, similarly, can do the same thing, but you're going to have an economic advantage over them. Even, maybe just a little bit of one, but still. It also, by sheer fact they can reinforce it, means that you can hit Tokyo from there, and they can hit West Coast from here, so that makes it important. You can also, obviously, hit Manchuria if you can hit Japan, or you could go this way, you can hit this entire coastline, or maybe you want to go this way and hit French Indochina, or maybe you want to hit the Philippines, or maybe you want to hit either of these money islands down here. Basically, everything of value that Japan starts with, if you can control Caroline Islands, you can hit it. And Japan would be very foolish to allow you to take it. And so if they have a strong defense there, that might be another reason to come up this way. But if they leave this open, their fleet's doing who knows what somewhere else, and you can move in here and have enough defense that they can't hit you, or they can't successfully hit you, that is what you want to do. And let this be the bulwark for your amphibious operations all along here. Japan is going to have to pick and choose and try and figure out where you're going to hit. And as long as you position yourself well, you can pretty much hit wherever you want. They can only defend so many places, and they can't defend everything. Now, when you do that, you do want to be careful, because when you move out of this position, is Japan going to sweep in here? And will you be able to counterattack at that point? Now, you would be able to move your guys back from, let's say you moved over here, you could bring them back and guys over here. And so you'll have some extra ships to bring in that you want to count on, or that you could potentially count on, and you want to make sure that you have at least something coming in this way until you have naval supremacy, until Japan knows that they can't beat you. Until you hit that point, you're always going to want to be having more ships. And if you're down this way, you can hit all that, and you are just one more turn away from trying to hit India if India has fallen. And so that is what you want to focus on as the U.S. Now, in a tournament game, Hawaii is a victory city. The Philippines is a victory city. Hong Kong, Shanghai, also victory cities. Calcutta. There's a bunch of victory cities around here. And if you're in a position where you can pick and choose and say, well, Japan's defending these two, I'm going to go after this one. Or Japan is pretty heavily fortified here and their fleet's down here, so I'm going to go up this way. You're going to be able to start picking those off, and then, especially in China, if Japan can't reinforce as heavily, they can start moving this way, the Soviets can start moving down, and you're going to be in an excellent position. Japan is going to be trying very hard to not allow you to do that, and that's fine. But this, I keep saying it, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's true. I've stressed in other versions that this is really not a front that's probably worth it for the U.S. This is one of the few, probably the only game, again, I haven't played Global 40, but aside from that, this is the only game where I've really seen, where I really feel like this is the way for the U.S. to go. So curious to hear if you all feel the same way, or if I'm completely missing something, or if you would much rather go against Germany, and if so, I'd love to hear why. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video. Hope you guys have enjoyed this series. I do plan on eventually putting up another one that talks about national objectives, so I look forward to getting that up and hearing your commentary.